They said, we'll be here. And we weren't sure they would, but there they are. So a round of applause for them. So my job today is to introduce Suze, to tell you a little bit about the book. And then I think I'll take some questions, and then I hope you'll have a few questions. And anything is in the game, including how she got fired from the Harvard Business Review, or anything else you want to cover. So, Suze?
All right. Well, thank you so much. I said to Jack about these two fellows who we met on the street. They said, we'll be there tonight. And I said, Jack, if those two guys are at the event tonight, I am Mother Teresa of Calcutta, so I guess I am. A new line for my resume. Every time I speak about 10-10-10, which I'll explain, I'm going to stand up. I feel like I'll squeeze. Every time I talk about 10-10-10 in front of a group, I have this sort of a little, especially when it's a crowd like this, I get a little post-traumatic stress syndrome, and I'll tell you why. It's a story from the front of the book, and some of you, if you've leafed through it, you'll see it. Is the way 10-10-10 as a decision-making tool came to me was that it was 14 years ago, and I was a young working mother. I had 4 children under the age of 7. I was a senior editor at the Harvard Business Review. I was not yet editor-in-chief, but I wanted to be. And I was invited to give a speech to a group of insurance executives in Hawaii. I lived in Boston. And this was this huge professional achievement because I was going to be paid $1,500 because somebody wanted to know what I had to say about the history of management. This was such a gigantic thing. But I couldn't leave these 4 children at home. I just felt like that was wrong. That wasn't the work-life balance I was going for. So I brought the 2 older children with me. And it was such an unmitigated disaster. From the beginning, one of the kids got incredibly sick on the plane. Then we got there. I was going to make them both feel better, so we rushed to the beach. I have a blonde son. I over-covered him. He got sun poisoning. And it got worse and worse until the absolute, I don't know if you can call it the pinnacle or the nadir, but at the absolute worst moment, I'm in a moment like this, giving a speech up on a stage, except for there were around 1,000 people in the room. And as I'm giving the speech with the PowerPoints, I looked to the very back of the room, and pressed up against the glass at the back are 2 little children in hula skirts, because I had put them in a hula dancing class to warehouse them while I was giving my speech. And of course, they ended up bursting into the room and shouting, "Mommy," and running towards the stage. And in this, my life and my career flashed in front of my eyes, and I ended the speech and sort of, "Hello, children, what are you doing here?" You know, I knew something had to change, and what changed was that I decided that my life was going to stop living me, and I was going to start trying to live my life. I was going to start trying to get my arms around it. Well, I was desperate, to tell you the truth, and the only way I knew was to start making my decisions differently. So the first thought I had was very sort of simple, and the first thought was, what if I just think about the consequences of my ideas, of my decisions, in 10 minutes and 10 years. If I just think about the very short term and the long term, if I can just wrap my arms around that at the same time, maybe I can start to get control of things. And that sort of played itself out in my mind for an hour or 2 as I'm sitting there just sort of wrecked by this whole experience. And I thought, you know what, actually I'm going to be awake twice in the next couple of months. I've got to think about that midterm too, that 10-month period. I've got to think about the short term, the sort of foreseeable future, and the distant future. And in that way, this idea 10-10-10 was born, a way to make decisions. At that time, I had no idea how this idea would come to change my life, because when the idea was just born, I didn't realize the next step, which was that I had to bring my values into it. I had been living the picture. I think you probably all know automatically what that means. I had been living this sort of white picket fence life that what my parents had wanted for me, I had sort of wanted for me, society sort of I felt wanted for me, and it was not real. I was not living authentically who I wanted to be, who I was. I was living a sort of a phony life, and I don't believe there's such a thing as a happy phony life, though Lord knows people try, and I was one of them. And when I finally came clean with myself about who I was and how I wanted to live and what I valued and what my priorities were, and I brought that piece of information into each one of my decisions, each one of my 10-10-10 decisions, my life really began to change. I started making decisions with a huge amount of clarity and consistency and transparency. So for instance, one day, I told my kids, we had a favorite TV show, Malcolm in the Middle, and I said, I'll be home right after work. Kids, I promise we'll watch Malcolm in the Middle tonight. Okay, Mom, we'll see you right after work. So of course, as I'm packing my briefcase at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, my boss comes up to me, there's a big problem in the production plant. Suzy, I need you to stay late. And I'm thinking, I'm thinking to myself, uh-oh, what am I going to do? Can't be in two places one time, and I just sort of nodded vaguely at her. But I had 10-10-10. And I knew what my values were, and I knew that one of my values was being a good mother, but I also was a mother, take it or leave it. One of my values was that it was not a child-centered house only, that the kids did not run the house only, that I was a single mom at that time, and the kids needed to understand that I worked, and that sometimes my work was going to come first. I loved my career, I loved the company, and I knew that in 10 months I was going to be up for a performance review, and as I said, I wanted to proceed in my career. And I did a 10-10-10 analysis. Called the house, the babysitter put me on the speakerphone, and I walked through my first 10-10-10 with the kids. I said, in 10 minutes you're going to be mad, but my boss, whose opinion really matters right now, is going to be so relieved with my availability. In 10 months, I will make this up to you. I'll make it up to you in a week, but I can't make it up at work. This is a huge test for me in 10 months. And in 10 years, kids, I said, my career will be where it should be, and you will all be in therapy for different reasons. So let's just start this one off. What's therapy, Mom? So they got it. And I started applying it all the time to small decisions. And it was working so well that I started applying it at work. And I became a manager, and I'd sit in a meeting, and there'd be a resource allocation decision, and I'd roll out this idea. Bit by bit, it spread. It spread among my friends, it spread among my coworkers, and in 2006, by that time I had been fired from the Harvard Business Review thanks to my running off with this gentleman, and I left the Harvard Business Review, but I began this career as a work-life balance columnist at Oprah Magazine. And I wrote about it for Oprah Magazine, and unbelievably, this wonderful avalanche of emails came back at me by people who had adopted the idea and started applying it. Entrepreneurs starting businesses, women trying to get off welfare, people trying to juggle elderly parents and young kids, at every variety. And from that, then from their incredibly poignant stories, how 10-10-10 works in relationships, parenting, work, careers, and friendship began to emerge. And eventually, after a bunch of time of research and the typical writing process, which is all blood, sweat, and tears, this book was born. And so here it is, and ever since the book has come out, once again, I've seen its efficacy and its utility in so many different lives, and I'm really excited just to share it with you. I think Jack is going to hit me up with some questions. I don't know what they are.
Either do I.
And then we hope to hear from you.
But I would say you left out something we always talk about, the other half of the story that came up about 6 months later when your boss asked you to do something else.
Yeah, actually in the book, I couple that story that I just told you about deciding to stay at work and solve the production crisis. I couple it with another 10-10-10 decision with a really different outcome. And it goes very briefly like this. About 6 months later, really in a very key point in my career, my boss said to me, we need your availability to be, you need to be very, very present in the office. And I said, I'm going to be here for you. And she said, great, because we need you to moderate an off-site board meeting. This is a gigantic coup for you. This is for somebody your age to moderate this. And I said, fantastic, when is it? And she literally named the exact date and time that my eldest son was going for his junior black belt, which is this huge seminal experience in the life of a child. And it was, I thought, once again, somebody's going to be mad and there's going to be blood on the floor, and I 10-10-10'd it. And it was so clear to me that this was one of those decisions that in 10 years, what was a huge event in his life, I could never undo the damage of not being there at this moment. There was no one who could go in my place, and I did not go to the offsite. And once again, when I went to my boss, I explained my decision using 10-10-10. And she said, okay, I hear you, I understand it, and I didn't try to mess with the details. I came right out and said, here are my values, here's how I thought about it. And when I was there that weekend, watching him get his little black belt, little movements and everything, I just remember thinking, I have no guilt, I have no angst, I know I'm in the right place, I made this decision the way I'm making all my decisions now. So it doesn't always end up that, work is the piece that wins, but I knew where my priorities were.
Now that sounds all nice packaged up, but I see you in somewhat of a more helter-skelter way of life at times. Don't you think gut plays an important role in all of our lives? We all make decisions
Yeah.
on the spur of the moment. Gut, we don't sit down and say,